And as usual, we will bring it. And the first thing we're going to bring you is author Rochelle Schweitzer. She's the author of the new book, She's the Boss, The Disturbing Truth About Nancy Pelosi. Oh, interesting. Rochelle, welcome. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me, Cenk.
All right, no problem. It should be an interesting conversation. So let's get started. What is the disturbing truth about Nancy Pelosi?
Well, what I found disturbing is that here we have the Speaker of the House, Cenk, and she truly does run her House like she is a party boss. That boss.
Isn't she, though?
I think she does, and that the word boss really in my book has a double meaning. First of all, she was raised in Baltimore by a former mayor, Tommy D'Alessandro Jr., who was he was the mayor for 12 years. And if you look at the operations in Baltimore during those times, he ran his own well-oiled political machine in that city. And so Pelosi actually really took after her family business. She says often that politics was in her genes, or as you would say today, in her DNA. And so she was able to study and learn under a master. And now, as Speaker of the House, if you really look at how she's operated on many levels, she's run it in many ways like a political boss.
Okay, so Rochelle, I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, she is the boss, right? I mean, she's the Speaker of the House, so she's going to run her party. Well, what am I missing?
Well, no, certainly you're going to run the party. But how are you going to run the party? I mean, I think we're seeing right now the party is in some trouble, maybe because the boss was a little too heavy-handed.
How so?
I think let's look at all the moderates who are running for their lives. I mean, back in 2009, the Wall Street Journal reported that she told her colleagues that she was willing to take casualties in these midterm elections if reform through. So I think we see right now a lot of...
Rochelle, couldn't you say that that's actually courageous to say, hey, you know what, she really believes in health care reform, whether you agree or disagree, and that, look, we're going to get this thing done, even if it costs us politically. I mean, isn't that courageous?
No, I would not say that's courageous. I would say that that's pushing your agenda through against really what a lot of people wanted. Let's look at the polls. I mean, after Scott Brown claimed the late Senator Kennedy's seat in Massachusetts, a Gallup USA Today poll showed that 55% of Americans wanted to shelve health care reform. Okay, they're there to serve us. They're not.
Well, two things about that.
They're not there to impose their agenda on us.
Well, two things about that, Rochelle. That's interesting because when Bush was in office for 8 years, he said almost every day, that almost every press conference, I should say, I don't care about the polls, and I'm going to do what I think is right. And Cheney said, oh, my God, he couldn't care less about the polls, and he didn't care where the country was on Iraq. So, for example, on the surge, the country was massively against the surge in Iraq, and they did it anyway. And didn't you think that was I mean, did you hate it when they did that, or did you like it when they did that?
Well, what do you think?
I don't know. You tell me.
Well, let's look at, first of all, these are two different issues. George Bush is the commander-in-chief. Okay,
so he gets to be the boss, but the Speaker of the House, she can't do anything? She can't try to push for her agenda? Why not?
He's in charge of the U.S. military. The Speaker of the House is not in charge of all 50 states.
No, but she doesn't claim to be. She's just trying to pass her bill.
But it's her bill. It's her bill. But it's her bill.
Yeah, of course. Whose bill was it going to be? Tom DeLay's? It's her bill, yeah. She's the head of that party. That's the party trying to pass the bill. Well, I mean, are you saying that if something slips below 50% in popularity in any poll, Speaker of the House should say, that's it, I'm done with it? No,
not at all. But I mean, I think I would say, Cenk, I mean, I agree. She is very politically savvy, and she has gotten a lot accomplished. However, if you see that you have a lot of colleagues that are going to have to go home to get reelected, and they're going home to constituents who don't like what you're doing, and they have the ability to get rid of you, I think she should take that into consideration.
So you want her to be more political?
Absolutely. I mean, she is the Speaker of the House. She is not Commander-in-Chief. Those are two different roles. I mean, the Speaker of the House is to run the House. The House is...
So she should actually... You're worried that she's not making enough political compromises to help conservative Democrats beat Republicans.
I'm not worried. I'm not really worried about it, but I mean, I do think we're seeing some repercussions of her overreaching and wheeling and dealing and strong-arming to get her agenda through.
Okay, now you mentioned health care. You said 55% were against it at the time. Did you see the polls then and now? AP just did a new poll saying that actually by a 2-to-1 margin, people were more against the bill because it didn't do enough, that they wished that the Democrats, Obama, Pelosi, et cetera, had pushed for more reform.
Well, I think it depends too what poll you're looking at. I mean,
Associated Press.
I saw a recent USA Today poll, I believe it was last week, that said that number of 55, now it's 56%, still weren't for the health care reform
No, Rochelle,
bill.
that's totally true. The AP said the same thing. They say that there's a majority, or in the case of the AP, a plurality of people who are against the bill, but that a much larger margin of people are against the bill because it didn't do enough reform. They wish Pelosi had pushed harder. So under your logic, shouldn't Pelosi have pushed even harder than she did?
No, well, I don't think so. I mean, we can look at those polls, Cenk, all we want, but let's look at the reality of what's happening in the states with the elections coming up. I mean, if people really, really wanted more, I think they'd be electing even more liberal people to take over these seats.
So you think in 06 and 08, the people said that they love Democrats because they just swept the Republicans. They said we don't like the Republicans at all, and we don't want Republican ideology because they swept them out of office, right?
I think in 06, I think in 06, if you really look at what they ran on, they didn't run on the issues. They ran on what? The Republicans, corruption, cronyism, and incompetence. Okay, they did not look at the issues. That was a campaign run on Mark Foley, Jack Abramoff, and on and on. They were not, because
Rochelle,
their issues were taking a higher ground.
Rochelle, are you saying, we're talking to Rochelle Schweitzer, she wrote the book, She's the Boss, The Disturbing Truth About Nancy Pelosi. Are you saying that in 06 Iraq was not an issue, and in 08 the economic crash was not an issue, that the American people didn't run on issues, that didn't understand those issues at all?
I would say I would agree with you in 08. That was definitely, there were some real problems in 08. But I would say the year she took over the House, if you really look at the campaign and what they ran on, it was Katrina, the bungling of Katrina. It was the Mark Foley was what really turned the tide and broke it open.
Katrina is a massive issue, though, isn't it? I mean, the Republicans bungled that, and the American people said, we reject you, right?
Well, yeah, and that was more the president. I wouldn't say. I mean, I think the Democrats were very effective at tying all that together.
But according to your logic, Rochelle, in 08, as you say, after the economic crash, we have a rejection of the Republican ideology. Shouldn't Pelosi and the Democrats have pushed massively for the change that the American people clearly said that they wanted?
Well, I don't think people wanted this massive of a change. I mean,
what do you base that on?
Well, I mean, let's look where we are today. Have things improved?
But I just told you polls.
Are people saying let's? I mean, the people they don't like what they're saying. I mean, if you look at polls,
I hear you.
If you look at polls now, a number of the polls show that they would much rather have the Republicans in charge of taxes and spending.
Actually, that's not accurate. They say that Republicans on some polls have a generic advantage. Actually, on most of them, they're tied. They have a much bigger advantage in the enthusiasm gap, and which is very important for the elections. But when you go issue by issue, including on taxes, Democrats actually win on those issues.
Well, I think, again, it depends what polls you're looking at.
Okay. So now, one issue is that you thought Pelosi was, I guess, too tough or not political enough. Why else is she disturbing? Because I'm not sure that a lot of people are. Well, maybe I don't want to say whether people are swayed or not by that. They can make up their own minds. But what else? What's so bad about Pelosi?
Well, I mean, let's look also. And today there was just a new poll that came out that showed that her negatives are as high as BP's. So that things aren't. I don't think things are faring well with her.
Okay, but why? Like, what's your I want you to tell me what's wrong with her.
Well, I mean, let's look at. First of all, I think there's a lot of hypocrisy. I think there's a lot of hypocrisy, which is used a means to her ends. I mean, if you let's look at, she talked about this was going to be the most open, honest Congress ever. And who did she select to back for majority leader? Jack Murtha. I mean, he was a loyalist. He had a lot to do with her rise to power. There were a lot of people early on that were skeptical of her. She was this, woman from California, and he saw a lot of potential in her and really helped her get connected and helped her rise up, up to the top of the perch. If you look at the late Jack Murtha, I mean, he was not, he was known to have a number of his own ethical scrapes as in the past as well. So, I think, when we talk about we're going to have the most open, honest Congress ever, that's not the case. Let's look at Charlie Rangel, the chief tax writer, until he stepped down. He was not forced down. He stepped down in March 2010. I think if we're going to have an open and honest Congress, and there are all these allegations from the Ethics Committee, we need to follow through on what
All
we're
right,
saying.
let me address a couple of things you said there. First of all, you said Pelosi has bad poll numbers. So did Dennis Hastert. So did Tom DeLay when they
Well,
were in charge.
if you look, I'm sorry, Cenk, there's a new poll today from the NBC News poll, Wall Street Journal, shows her negatives are higher than Gingrich's ever were.
Okay, so that's one particular case. So you know who had worse negatives was Dick Cheney. So,
Well, Dick Cheney was the vice president. He wasn't.
So that means he gets to be unpopular?
Well, I mean, he didn't have to get reelected.
Okay, all right. Well, that's one way of looking at it. Now, when we go to the corruption issue, right? So the reason she went for Murtha over Hoyer was twofold. One, Murtha obviously fought courageously on the Iraq War, which was a huge priority for Democrats, liberals, progressives, etc. And number two, she was worried that Hoyer was too beholden to corporate interests and special interests.
No,
that seems like a fair consideration.
No, I disagree. I mean, why wouldn't she support Hoyer? I mean, if they're going to be unified, I mean, Jack Murtha was being loyal. She was being loyal to Jack Murtha. If you really study Pelosi, Jack Murtha had a lot to do with Pelosi's success.
But wait a minute, Rochelle, and we're talking to Rochelle Schweitzer. She wrote the book, She's the Boss, The Disturbing Truth About Nancy Pelosi. Rochelle, does that make all the sense in the world? Even if I assume you're right, which, by the way, Steny Hoyer is as corporatist as it gets. I mean, you guys should be going after him on his special interests, right? So I love that she didn't support Hoyer on the actual issues, right? But if she supported Murtha because he supported her earlier, isn't that politics 101? What's wrong with that?
Well, it's great to support somebody who's loyal to you, but let's also consider the backgrounds of the people that we're supporting. I mean, Jack Murtha was known as the king of pork. He had
that's true.
I mean, and on and on. I mean, if we're going to support somebody, that's great. If somebody's loyal to us, but if we're talking about having the most open, honest Congress ever, let's make sure that the people that we're supporting are, that their closets are pretty clean.
Rochelle, let me run this by you, though. Okay, so on the issue of corruption, that's a very important one because she said she was going to drain the swamp. Now, on Rangel and Maxine Waters, now they've been charged, but she didn't try to protect them at all.
Well,
she asked them to step down. No. They did, or Rangel did. And they're being tried. I mean, isn't that exactly what you want?
But here's the difference. She has never publicly gone out and really criticized Rangel. I mean, she said, "We'll just wait and see what happens."
Is she supposed to?
Okay,
let's she wait for the trial?
No. Let's turn the clock back to 2004, when DeLay was charged by the very same committee, and Pelosi came out the next day and said, DeLay is unethically fit to serve. So there's a real double standard there. And this is the Speaker of the House. This isn't just, a congressman from a district from California. This is the Speaker of the House who should be setting the example.
Rochelle, I think you've been around politics long enough to know that the Republicans are going to say the Democrats are terrible and the Democrats are going to say the Republicans are terrible. But what matters is your actions, right? She did not protect Rangel. She did not protect Waters. And let me run this by you. Here are a great number of the things she did regarding ethics. She was instrumental, and I'm quoting, I believe, the Associated Press here, was instrumental in winning increased disclosure of lobbyist spending and contributions. She passed a ban on lobbyist gifts to lawmakers, an end of cheap rides on corporate jets, curtailment of privately financed trips that often amount to free vacations, creation of an independent ethics office, and the identification of sponsors of earmarks, congressional spending, given to favored recipients who often return to favor with campaign contributions. Now, that's a lot of reform that all seems fairly positive. No credit for that? That doesn't seem like that's a real effort at trying to drain the swamp and improve upon the corruption that was in Congress?
Well, I mean, these are all good, great ideas, but I have a hard time believing that these have been enforced incredibly, and I still go back to, I'm looking at the chief people around her, and these are people that there has been a blind eye turned to some of their scrapes. So
I don't see the blind eye. I see trials.
I think Charlie Rangel survived way too long with what he did, and he was one of the grand architects of health care reform. And I just think if you're going to talk about having an open, honest Congress, one of your three architects shouldn't be facing the charges he was facing.
Okay, so she was supposed to go into everybody's life, and I mean, she set up. The reason I say that, Rochelle,
you don't have to go into his life.
But reason I say that, Rochelle, is she set up an independent ethics investigation, and by the way, the Republicans voted overwhelmingly against that. They didn't want it, and it barely passed by one vote. And look what happened since then. They've actually independent group has brought out a lot of Democratic corruption. It's worked exactly as Pelosi expected it to, and it's thrown her own party under the bus.
No,
I mean, shouldn't you be giving her credit for that?
That's not what's thrown her party under the bus at all. I mean, if you look at recent accounts, one of the Democrat strategy now is knowing they can't win on the issues, is they're going to change the subject, and the subject they're going to start doing is going after Republicans in different states, after any ethical issues or personal issues. So I don't think
Rochelle,
that's not what threw the Democrats under the bus at all.
You know that they're opposing parties, right? Like they try to, one party says, hey, they're the bad guys, and the other one says they're the bad guys, and they try to make their case. That's usually how an election goes, right?
Yeah, I understand that, but why do the Democrats, why can't they ever talk about the issues? Why do they have to always go, like in 06, it was going after the Republicans' personal lives? That's what they want to do again, because they can't win on the issues. So they have to change the
Iraq
subject.
was not an issue. The economic crash was not an issue. Today, whether the Republicans would drive us back into the economic ditch was not an issue.
I would argue on Iraq and the economic situation, the Republicans admitted that these are some problems and we need to deal with them. You never hear the Democrats saying, this is a problem, we need to deal with it, we need to reconsider this.
You never hear that. Okay. I mean, I think I've heard that, but you haven't. Okay. I hear you. Look, it was an interesting conversation, and the book is called She's the Boss, The Disturbing Truth About Nancy Pelosi. And Rochelle's made her case here, and we really appreciate you coming on to talk about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Cenk.
All right, no problem. We'll be right back.